So my name is Aaron Foster. I'm a bartender here at Zanti Cucina Italiana here in River Oaks. Our concept is Italian cuisine, authentic Italian cuisine, and craft cocktails, of course. So we offer a lot of Italian varietals, Italian wines in our cocktails. We feature a lot of Italian liqueurs. So we really try to highlight Italian culture, Italian products, Italian liqueurs, Italian wines, and really give people an experience of what Italian cuisine is like. I've been in the hospitality industry for a long time. Started off at Pappadeaux as a server, and that's where I started bartending as well. Did that for a couple years, and it was cool. Very great place to work. But one thing about it was I found myself wanting to learn more about the actual craft of bartending. I felt like they would just kind of give us recipes and then we would just make them. So at a certain point, I got the opportunity to work at this hotel where they were having a really great craft program. One of my friends worked over there, so I did a stage over there. They liked what I did. Thinking back on it, at the time, I could probably barely make a great lemon drop at the time. But they were willing to teach me, I was willing to learn, so we were on and popping from there. The thing about that was I had two people there that were supposed to be teaching me how to do craft bartending, and shortly after I got hired, both of them weren't there anymore. So I went from somebody that was learning from these two guys that were highly experienced in craft bartending to being the guy that is basically on the front row having to make these cocktails that, you know, I'm barely familiar with. You know, I remember in the early days, I would be at the bar, somebody would come and ask me for something that I wouldn't even know about, and I'd be like, hold on a second. And on my back bar, I'd have my Death and Co book, and I would look up recipes, and, you know, I would learn. So people ask me all the time, you know, how did you learn how to make drinks? And I always tell them I learned from you. I learned from you, from just people asking me drinks and me not being afraid to say, I don't know what that is, let me look it up. And so, you know, after years of doing that, you know, I know a few drinks. When I first got into bartending, I was really into discovering craft cocktails, reading these old-timey books, the Savoy cocktail book, you know, and looking up these old recipes and seeing what I could add to them. And so that was pretty much my motivation behind creating for probably my first few years of bartending. Nowadays, I've really developed a love for the culinary arts. You know, I'm not a chef myself, but I've worked with a lot of great chefs in my day. We have a great chef, Hilario Zamora, over here. And I really like listening to chefs talk about flavor pairings, talk about their philosophy towards cooking, that goes even beyond the dishes that they're cooking. That has to do with their culture, their heritage, their experiences growing up, their show of love for people. And I feel like that's a lot of my motivation for making drinks. So a lot of times nowadays I find my inspiration from culinary concepts. I love to cook. Like I said, I'm not a chef, but I cook every day at home. So a lot of times I'll discover a flavor pairing, a recipe that I tried out, and I'll be like, I feel like I can take these elements out of this recipe and apply it to a cocktail. So I've done that plenty of times. So I would say between reinventing classics and infusing culinary concepts into cocktails, that's where my inspiration comes from. The difference between making a good cocktail and delivering a great experience, you know, I think it has to do with more than just following the recipe and making the drink correctly. At the end of the day, it's a people business. So it's about having a love for people, having a care for what you do, being present in what you're doing at the moment. And I think that is what honestly separates me as a bartender is I have an extreme purpose of being present in the moment of what I'm doing and really pouring a lot of love into my drink. I feel like I say all the time that the secret ingredient is love. So I feel like when I'm at the bar and people see the love that I put into these drinks, you know, an old fashioned only has a few ingredients, but you can tell when somebody puts love into an old fashioned. You can tell when somebody puts love into a dish that they put in front of you. And I think that's the secret ingredient that I use. One thing that separates a good cocktail from a great cocktail experience is attention to detail. You know, if you've ever had a lemon drop that nobody took the time to double strain, or if you ever had a old fashioned that they didn't take the time to express that orange peel on there and they just kind of put it on there, you know, you can tell. It's like I said, it's about having a love for what you do, being present in what you do, and when you pay attention to detail like that, especially in a bar setting, you know, people are sitting right there looking at you, so they notice it, they ask for it, and I feel like they reward it generously. When I first became a bartender, it had nothing to do with me wanting to make drinks. I had read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I have a naturally introverted nature, so I wanted to have a job where I could practice meeting people at a fast clip and practice these things that I learned in this book that I read. And what I've learned over the years is things like asking people, remembering people's names, asking people how their day was, just being curious about people, knowing psychology, understanding body language. You know, all of these things are extremely helpful when it comes to bartending. It helps you to pinpoint things that nobody can really train you to do. You just have to know to do them.